Here we are. We are live. We've got a special guest coming to join us here in a little bit. We're going to sit here for a little while. But, John, we got to watch some football. Some guys put some stars on their helmets and one on a football field against another team with a clock and a scoreboard, and none of it mattered, but all of it mattered all at the same time. Through the very first Cowboys preseason game, and here we are.
Yeah, it was an exciting, obviously once you get into the doldrums of the game, the fourth quarter, it was some unexciting football a little bit, but I was actually I had a good time, especially rewatching, going through the all 22, seeing how everybody performed, who performed well, who didn't, who, had myths made about them from the game copy, and they just let that establish their opinion on a player. There was others, who thought a player was someone else at doing other stuff when it wasn't him, getting mixed up identities. So it was just
That's always fun. That's always fun in the preseason with the new numbers and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yep. John, before we get too far, we're going to venture into the cave. We have a caveman in our midst.
Now my barbecue sensei.
There you go. Same. I think he's been that for everybody.
Good morning, gentlemen.
How's it going, buddy? We are we're live here, and we're glad to have you, man. It's exciting to be here. We saw the Cowboys play the Rams. John just gave a couple of his takeaways as we got through. So tell us your thoughts coming out of the game. Whether it's Trey Lance, whether it's Tyler Guyton, whether it's Mazi Smith. Give us your thoughts as we get going.
Trey Lance, that's enough said there. Yikes. I like what I saw with Mazi when he was able to use his hands and dictate contact. Of course, he's put on weight, put the weight back on. He's not where he's supposed to be, but he's getting there and recovering from injury, putting on weight, not playing football. Just cardio just wasn't there. I think he gassed, he had one little good run stuff and then he pretty much gassed out after that. But really liked what I saw out of our new left tackle, which is, considering today's news, that's not a good thing, but I guess it's a silver lining that we feel good going into the season with him, I guess Hoffman would be the starting center. They still want to see BB work on his snaps a little better, but outside of that, the wide receivers look good. Zim secondary had them boys in knots. Pretty solid outing, all things considered, outside of the quarterback.
Yeah, I think that one of the
Hey man, he had one okay drive.
Yeah.
he got 4 turnovers and didn't get a touchdown. Come on.
Yeah, the quarterback stuff is rough. We're going to get into some tape on a couple of those things here in a little bit. John, had the opportunity to go through the tape. I separately, as we like to disclose very clearly on a regular basis around here, I separately from John obtained all 22 tape related to the Cowboys preseason game. And any said all 22 tape comes courtesy of me, not of John or PFF, or completely unrelated to that. So those disclosures will always be there. But the news that Mike is referring to is the fact that we found out today, I think it was David Moore is the first one.
Uh-oh,
is Joey having internet trouble again? Well,
lost.
The Udoga toe injury is going to be out. They said 4 to 6 weeks, I believe. It's not going to require surgery, just going to require extensive rehab. And like Mike and Joey were kind of intimating before, it might be a little bit of a blessing in disguise because, we've been fiending for Tyler Guyton to get those first team snaps, consistently. And now he will, he's going to get all of the first team snaps that he can handle. He's going to get the run with the first team so he can build that continuity with Tyler Smith next to him and with the rest of the offensive line. And I think that's going to benefit them in the long run, being able to have him inserted with the first team as much as possible as soon. And then also, I think, Joey, you DM'd us this before the show, but having Awesome Richards be able to take the second team left tackle snaps is also very big and very important. for someone like him, who actually performed very, very well, in my opinion, during the preseason game at guard, left guard, and tackle. So I think it's going to end up being beneficial in the long run for the Cowboys.
Yeah, absolutely. The NFL is coming for my internet since the All 22 is out. They're coming for it. The Feds. But yeah, the idea of Tyler Guyton getting all the left tackle 1 reps and now Awesome Richards getting all the left tackle 2 reps sounds like exactly what I want for the next 3 or 4 weeks going into the season. It's just Chuma Edoga is what Chuma Edoga is, and that he's going to continue to be that once he gets back from his injury, which is like a halfway acceptable reserved swing tackle who can step in for a game or 2. But there's a lot
25 of them in the league.
Yeah, so there's a lot more upside with an Awesome Richards as your backup tackle and with Tyler Guyton as your starting tackle than there is with Edoga. So I'm okay with the fact that this injury is going to cost Edoga some time in camp specifically, and then early into the season as well.
With the musical chairs that we've had on this offensive line, what seems like 6 years now. When's the last time you had a concurrent offensive line for more than 2 or 3 games at a time?
Yeah,
it's just been a killer, and it gets exposed the later you get into the season. These guys need to get in there and they need to work together and they need to learn how the other guy moves. You can talk to your blue in the face in the classroom and the film room and everything else like that, but you need to get out there and work together and get your flow in.
Yep. John knows I preached that. I was the guy who was mad in OTAs that Tyler Guyton wasn't left tackle 1 because of how important the coaches can't in one breath complain about not getting enough practice reps and then give practice reps to not real NFL starters just because they're a veteran or something like that. So
yeah, it's frustrating.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the overall consensus is that Tyler Guyton was pretty darn impressive, and, and because the injury wound up in and out and then back in again and all that kind of stuff that probably in a way he wasn't expecting to, but played really well. John, you saw some awesome stuff in the run game. You highlighted you've highlighted a few times some awesome stuff in the run game. I thought he was good in pass protection. My whole be big and be good at getting in the way concept of offensive line play, on display a few times. And I think he played pretty well. And I think that if you had better quarterback play on the offense, and Mike kind of alluded to this, you probably would have seen 2 or 3 touchdowns. It probably would have been 21-13 or 24-6 or something like that, because you never know what happens at the end of the game. But I think if you got some more consistent quarterback play from the Cowboys, it would have been a significant different scoreboard picture. But that's not really what we're here to talk about anyways. We're here to talk about it.
Yeah, and kind of going off the Tyler Guyton stuff, the thing that really impressed me a lot in the run game was his ability to create movement on contact. He's not the biggest offensive tackle in college. He wasn't the best run blocking offensive tackle. He wasn't someone that was displacing defenders out of their gap consistently, but against the Rams, he was moving folks, especially on combination double teams and on base blocks. He was really creating good enough movement. I think the only issue I saw in the run blocking department was when he was on the move in space, his targeting was a little off. He didn't really take the best angles, up to the second level or to the outside to get to hit his target. And that's not a huge problem. Everybody's talking about that one clip where he cracks Jalen Cropper and his defender, but that and how it showed like something so great. But the problem is that you don't want 2 blockers blocking 1 defender in that situation. So someone was targeting either the wrong person or took the wrong angle or got mixed up, because you typically don't want 2 offensive players blocking a defensive back.
Yeah, I don't have that play marked in the tape for us to look at, but it was an interesting play. And it's a crack toss kind of sweep concept. And you got Jalen Moreno Cropper, this tiny little wide receiver, supposed to come crack back on this linebacker type. And he's supposed to hold up the angle and let the tight end and the tackle, in this case Tyler Guyton and Luke Schoonmaker, pull around and take on. Then you wind up with big mismatches on the secondary players with a tackle and a tight end out in space trying to block or ready to block those guys. And in theory, you get that crack block, you get those guys out in space, you wind up with a straight runway to the end zone for your running back. But when the wide receiver gets blown up by the linebacker coming inside out, then Tyler Guyton, they wind up in Tyler Guyton's path, and he's going to take the most dangerous guy, which then happens to be the guy who's blowing up his wide receiver. So then he blows that whole thing up, but you still wind up with the free defender. So it was one of those tough plays where it just goes to prove, and I've got a different run play in my little markings here that we'll look at here in a minute that highlight just how hard it is to run the ball, because everybody has to be perfect, or the play is going to get blown up for negative yardage or a negative impact on the game, minus EPA, unsuccessful run, whatever, however you want to classify it, if one guy is not perfect.
Yep.
Again, the FBI is coming from.
Yeah, I'll take care of this. Yeah, see, that ties back into that musical chairs thing I was talking about with the offensive line. These guys don't have any consistency playing next to each other. So when it gets crunch time and you're up against the 49ers and you got to go get 4 yards, and they know you're coming. Everybody in the building knows you're coming. You got to be able to go get that short yardage.
And with 2 all-pro guards, you should be able to go get it. But with everything going on, they haven't been able to in the past.
Yeah, and offensive line is one of those things that it's like a weak link chain, you can have 4 out of 5 offensive linemen that have beautiful blocks, that do everything they're supposed to do, and you just have one guy that misses his block and it blows everything up. It's kind of the opposite of a receivers. The receivers, you can have 4 of the 5 eligibles be completely manned up, completely covered, and one guy gets open, and you can have a giant play, a giant touchdown. But usually with offensive line, I know PFF does a ton of work recently on perfectly blocked plays and non-perfectly blocked plays, and there's just such a stark difference when there's just one lineman who doesn't do his job. I think it obviously craters the yards per carry, it craters the success rate. So it's one of those things where, like he keeps saying, the musical chairs on the offensive line really hurts, because if they're not operating as one single unit and everybody is collectively doing their job successfully, it's really, really hard to be successful. And when you combine that, when you're going against, extremely talented defenses, like the 49ers, or you're going against like a Dexter Lawrence from the New York Giants, or Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne against Washington Commanders, it's really difficult to consistently get those perfectly blocked plays up front.
Absolutely. On the wide receiver side of things, we've talked a lot about, how much the depth in this wide receiver room has impressed, John, you when you were at practice, and a lot of the other guys who've looked around. I thought, we talked about Jalen Moreno proper having a little bit of a tough time on the crack block, had a couple of, bobbles and double catches and things like that where he didn't do his quarterback any favors. I thought Jalen Brooks, it was one of those situations where Jalen Tolbert not getting a uniform, Jalen Tolbert in a ball cap on the sideline said a whole lot about where the wide receiver depth chart stands. But then Jalen Brooks goes out and looks like pretty clearly the best player on the field, whenever he was the best player not in the trenches. I think Tyler Guyton probably one of the better players on the field, but one of the best skill players on the field whenever he was out there. And so it kind of looks like we go from a situation where we kind of feel like we have a true number one and kind of a pretty high-end number 2, and then a whole bunch of question marks after that, to like, do we have a legitimate top 3 wide receivers and then a number 4 that can play legit snaps and be involved? Or do we still have a lot of questions about who number 3 is, and they're just holding it?
I would like to take all 7 of those guys at the back of the depth chart and go get one guy I know can play. Can we do that, please? Just all y'all. Can we just we're all in, and then give me something back. Give me Terry McLaurin or something, because I just, the Tolbert thing being not even getting any reps didn't make any sense to me. He still needs. He's still green. He's year 3. I thought he would have played at least a quarter. And then, these guys get out there and they, there's always a preseason hero every single year. It's Lance Lenore, it's yada, 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 yada. And then you get to the season, you're like, what happened to that guy? It's like, oh, he's actually playing against the starters now, and everything's different. So it's hard to just count on that.
Yeah, I think the Jalen Tolbert sitting out was much less about him needing the reps and them just trying to keep him healthy, because I forget who it was. It might have been Andrew Whitworth on the broadcast, but someone was talking about, in these games, the starting caliber players, the quote unquote first team for the preseason, are only getting 8 to 12 snaps really in the game. Whereas in practice and scrimmage, they're getting, 20, 30, 40 snaps per opportunity to improve and whatnot. And since, you're playing a Rams, a team who doesn't play any of their starting caliber players in the preseason, especially
which is smart.
Day one. So I understand why they wouldn't want to put Jalen Tolbert in a environment where he can risk injury. I don't know why I keep thinking energy, but injury. Because especially when you don't have Dak Prescott in the game, so it's not like he's building continuity. It's like, what is he really tangibly improve or develop in those 8 to 12 snaps against backup players with a backup quarterback? And I just don't see there's a ton of value there. Now, I think if Dak Prescott does get some snaps in the game, you definitely got to have Tolbert in there or something. Or if you're going to play the first team, give them more run, or maybe that defense is playing their first team starters and you want to get Jalen Tolbert some more reps against a quality starting cornerback in the NFL. Those are situations where I understand where you want to play him. But in this specific situation against the Rams, I just don't think the potential positives outweigh the potential negatives in that situation.
It's like the Kansas City playing Mahomes for one quarter. Like, what's one quarter going to do for you, or one series, whatever it was, when the season's 5 weeks away? Let that dude go down with a non-contact injury and see if you still care about those meaningless reps on August 10th.
Yeah, and the thing about, I also wonder if there's a little bit of this dynamic of, with CeeDee Lamb not being in camp. We talk about Jalen Tolbert as wide receiver 3, but in real life right now on the depth chart, Jalen Tolbert is wide receiver 2 because CeeDee Lamb's not there. And he's under contract. Yes, we all know he's going to be there. We all know that's going to happen. But these coaches.
Hey,
Joey's fighting the internet. Joey's fighting the internet, and he's currently losing.
I guess we'll have our answer tomorrow, and we'll see who they line up because it's another practice game tomorrow, right?
Oh yeah,
with the Rams.
Yeah, true.
We'll see how they line them up.
There you go. All right, so we're gonna test my internet here a little bit. We're gonna see. This is dangerous, but we've got some all 22 guys, and this is a new program that I haven't really played with a whole lot before, but we're gonna go here. So this is relatively early in the game. This is a second down, this is a second down and 10, and this is you hear Tom Brady talk about how so many of these these crazy plays that these quarterbacks make now, or these really hard throws that quarterbacks wind up having to make, are plays that they shouldn't even be in, plays that they should see something pre-snap and get out of, and all that other kind of stuff. And so on this play right here, you can see, the Cowboys are in a 2-by-2 formation. So you see the two tight ends over here, and the hold on. I'm trying to, like I said, I'm still playing with it here. But you see the two tight ends over here, and you see the two wide receivers down here to this side. And you can see they've got this edge type, linebacker type, overhang type player hanging out over here on this outside over here. And they also have the overlap safety over the top. So anytime you see that as a quarterback ever, hey, this guy right here, this linebacker type that's lined up out wide, this guy is coming. He is not covering if I have a safety overlap directly.
Oh, he's lined up on the damn sideline.
Parlance, they call it capped. He's capped.
Yes. I call it an overlap. It's capped. Yes, that's the real verbiage that people use, will be capped, right? If you've got this defender capped, he's coming, because this safety is only this wide, especially to the field side. Like, they're on the opposite hash. The only reason this guy is this wide, this is not to play some cover 2 quarters type concept. This is to be out here over the top of this slot receiver so that we make sure that we have that man coverage. So a quarterback in this scenario pre-snap should know plenty ahead of time, all right, this guy is coming. I'm not getting a too deep look here. And if I could get my markers to work, which apparently they're not going to right now, but the concept here is there's a smash concept to this side, which is just it's a deep corner by the inside wide receiver here, and then a short hitch or little in-cut route by the outside wide receiver. And then up at the top, you've got a deep corner from Schoonmaker there on the outside. And then this is Brevin Spanford, John's guy, who runs like a little bit of like an angle post type route here. And then the running back kind of comes and sits over the ball. So, and again, it's the preseason for one. It's early in the season. We don't know what all they have installed. If Trey Lance is in a regular season game, we've got to hope he checks out of this play, because this play is made for, both of these side concepts are made to play against a too high defense. So this side over here is made to isolate this corner over here on the outside. If the corner drops underneath the corner route, then we're going to throw it underneath to the hitch. If he drives on the hitch, then we have leverage to throw the out. Up here, then we essentially create like a little scissors concept off of this deep safety. So the deep safety then has to decide, is he going outside with the corner, or is he coming inside with the post? The opposite should be open. But because we have this cap defender, we know we're not getting too high. There's no way you're getting too high with a cap defender over here, because he's coming. And he even shows it to you early, and of course it's not even going to play. All right. But what winds up happening is this guy comes, this safety rolls back over the top, and now you wind up with nobody open here because you got just like traditional one-on-one man coverage with a deep safety. You're not getting open in that scenario. And then you have this cornerback playing in kind of a trail technique under the corner route. He winds up trying this really difficult high side throw to Schoonmaker over there, and it doesn't wind up working. It's not a good throw because it's not a good place to be trying to throw the ball to. And so he tries to throw that high side ball there, and it never really quite works out because there's just no window there to make that throw. So this is the kind of stuff that Trey Lance we talk all the time about how Trey Lance just needs reps, and how if he's got to be able to see the game better, he's got to be able to process the game better, all of those kinds of things to be able to be, a viable quarterback at the NFL level, and how there's just right now it's a tough situation for Trey because he's not getting enough opportunities. He's probably going to throw more dropbacks and more passes this preseason than he has in the last 4 or 5 years.
That's the most passes he's ever thrown into the game in a football game. I went all the way back to high school.
Yeah, and he will probably cumulatively throw 100 to 150 passes over the course of this 3-week preseason period, and I don't think he's thrown that many since high school, probably, because he barely played at North Dakota State, all that kind of stuff. So, and they were a super run team at North Dakota State. So again, there are just these quarterback things that he doesn't see, and
he might not even seen that defense before.
Right.
The guys had like 37 reps his entire freaking career.
Exactly. And so there are some quarterback things that he doesn't do yet. And then you see the next play, and I was going to go to the next play. It's 3rd and 10 on the next play. They put him in empty and kind of let him play point guard, and he drops back, and you see all the stuff that gets people excited. He drops back, escapes the pocket, keeps his eyes downfield, sees a running lane, takes off running, runs for 14 yards on 3rd and 10, converts the first down, moves the chains, etc. But then you get 2 or 3 plays later, and they're at the 4-yard line, and his feet are bad, and he's not, he's got a guy about as open as you're ever going to find a guy in the corner of the end zone. All he's got to do is, and this is a landmark throw that he's made probably hundreds of times in private workouts and practices and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that was his biggest issue. One of the biggest issues that I saw with him is that when he missed, he wasn't giving the receivers a chance.
He has no touch. It's all or nothing. It's
when you're targeting, especially you're targeting receivers in the end zone, you have to give them a chance. The worst thing that you can do is overthrow the ball into the end zone because you give no one a chance. And the fact that his accuracy was such a problem, even when he was completing throws, he was making it impossible for the receivers to create yards after the catch because they had to manipulate their body in the air. So when they landed, they weren't in a position to, transition upfield and create yards after the catch or create and make tacklers miss. It's just, he was really you really want your quarterback to maximize the offense that's available. And he was like, honestly, like minimizing the opportunities that the Cowboys had to create and generate good offense.
My issue with it is we already have a guy in Cooper Rush that we've seen can run the offense, the way as they have it installed with Dak. I don't need that out of Trey Lance. If Trey Lance is coming in the game, I want him to throw 14 passes, not 41. I want him to get about 80, 90 yards rushing. When you want your backup quarterback, you want something dynamic. And the one thing he can do is run. I mean, he looked like a running back when he gets out in open space. And if you want somebody to just come in and plod along and run the offense as it stands with Dak, what are we doing with Trey Lance? I don't get it. They're trying to fit they're trying to fit a block into a round hole, in my opinion, by making him try to process all of this when you're minimizing what he can actually bring. And say, Dak goes down with a concussion, or he gets a leg cramp, or he's got to come, he's got to sit out. You got to go get evaluated. You got to come out for a series. Put Trey Lance in there, let him run the ball 7 times. I don't want him throwing across the middle of the field. I don't want him throwing end zone fades, because he's going to rifle it into the third row. Get on your horse, and get you some rushing yards. And that's just the way I see it.
Yeah,
I
totally agree. When Lance is in the game, you want to see a steady diet of zone read. You want to see some option plays. You want to see some RPO, some things that take advantage of his ability to create with his feet. And if he has to throw, you have clear, definitive reads. Like, this guy's open, he's not. You better go, bro. If you give him a wide menu of options, it seems like it kind of short circuits him a little bit. So I would like them to really dumb it down for him, put a lot of zone reads in, put some, maybe even throw in some triple option, throw in some RPO, some, all these type of things that we've seen, like the Eagles do with Jalen Hurts, who obviously Jalen Hurts is better than Trey Lance, but I think they're kind of similar quarterbacks of that same ilk, not the most accurate guys who can run really well, very powerful runners, very athletic guys, so I think in those situations, I would kind of start, taking a little bit from what the Eagles have done the past.
When they give him a wubby, when they're doing those RPOs and outside zone stuff, there's always guy designated. If he knows Hurts is going left, there's one guy designated that trails him the entire way across. Right, he's got somebody trailing him or mirroring him, if you will, on the right-hand side. They always give him an easy outlet in case the run isn't there or the deep ball isn't there. He's got something. There's a guy going, "Hey, I'm 7 feet away from you. Throw me the ball." And that's what they need to do. Because turns out being an NFL quarterback is kind of hard. So you're throwing entirely too much on his plate, man. You're throwing entirely, and he can't. You see it. He can't get past his first read. His brain locks up.
Yeah, and I do wonder, part of the value of the preseason is to get these guys reps in areas that they need to develop in, right? Mm-hmm. So we've seen, and it was Kellen Moore as the offensive coordinator, but it was Mike McCarthy as the head coach. When we saw the Ben DiNucci game plan against the Eagles, right, that looked like a completely different offense than what they had run, with Dak and in other situations. And so I at least hold out a little bit of hope that in a situation, in a regular season game where they're out there trying to win the game, not trying to just get Trey Lance as many reps as they can, that they would find a way to maximize those things that he does rather than just pushing him into what their typical offense would
be. Yeah. You make a valid point, but I'd like to see him put some. He's not going to be on the team next year, right? There's pretty much you're not paying. You're not going to give the guy a contract. So he needs to put some tape out there, and that tape he put out there last week or a few days ago is not great. I would like to see. You don't have to lean fully into go full Wildcat, but lean into what he does. Let him put some film out there. Maybe somebody will get quarterback hungry because somebody's going to get hurt. It always happens. Somebody's going to get hurt. Maybe you can get a 6th for him or something. You're never getting the 4. That's wipe that away. That's gone forever. That was a dumbass trade to start with. But you need to figure out what you're going to do with him. And if you're not going to use him, let him put some tape out there and see if you can get something for him besides a 7th-round comp pick or whatever the hell, once he signs somewhere else in the XFL. I don't even know if he'll sign anywhere else. If you don't have any tape, he might end up in the XFL.
Make him Taysom Hill.
That's something, something of the sort. You wish you could DFA him, like send him to the Round Rock for a little bit with the minor league team and let him get some reps in. But unfortunately, we don't have that. We don't have that option in the NFL. You got to play, and it's just a weird situation to me because they're keeping Russ. You're not going to keep 3 quarterbacks active on game day because they're probably going to go heavy at tight end because they like 2 of them. Really, John Stevens, Anderson Jones. Charlotte Jr. Anderson he's going to make the roster if he doesn't get hurt. They like Span Ford because he can block, and then you still got the other. Yeah,
yeah. There seems to be there seems to be a very specific emphasis on trying to get the ball to Luke Schoonmaker early in the game too, like. The deep corner that I was trying to show earlier, they ran a bootleg where he was the slide guy on the coming across the formation to try to get the ball into his hands in the flat. Like it seemed very interesting that there was almost a defined purpose of trying to get the ball.
It's like the Homer Simpson. It's just a little dirty. It's still good. It's still good. They're just trying to save. They're trying to save face, and I don't want it. Obviously, I want it to work out, but gosh, I beat that horse in the ground. That's a frustrating one. That's a frustrating one with the players you had sitting there in the 2nd round, and you had Ferguson already on the roster. And how did we know Ferguson could play? And they were like, ooh. So
that's I was just about to make that point, Mike. I think kind of going off on a tangent on Schoonmaker. One of the biggest misevaluations the Cowboys have had in the last couple of years is their misevaluation of Jake Ferguson. Because if they would have believed that Jake Ferguson can be the guy that he's obviously become, Schoonmaker isn't the pick in that 2nd round, and you can grab someone else who would have fit and fulfilled a need, a much bigger need. The fact that they thought that they needed to find someone who can be that tight end one, even though, like we all said, what we saw from Jake Ferguson as a rookie, he was much better than Dalton Schultz was as a rookie. And look what Dalton Schultz became. He became, their favorite starting tight end. Dak Prescott's one of his favorite check down targets. And
he lives in the backyard in the offseason. I mean, they're close. They're real close.
Yeah, and it's frustrating.
Yeah.
Then the fact that Jake Ferguson outperformed him as a rookie should have gave them the confidence that he can become that guy. But they just, for some reason, they didn't believe that. So they thought that they honestly overdrafted Luke Schoonmaker, who was coming off an injury. Someone who I was probably one of Schoonmaker's biggest fans. And even I had him in the 3rd round. And they take him a round earlier in the 2nd round when, in addition to the injury concerns, it just doesn't make much sense.
McCarthy got his gut.
Evaluation really hurt the Cowboys' overall roster construction more than it should have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially in a world where we're now talking about defensive tackle depth, and we're talking about, they took one in the 1st round that should have solved the problem, but we're talking about these depth problems at edge now with Sam Williams hurt, and we're talking about all these other problems where they need to add a guy here, they need to add a guy there, they don't have a real life center, like they all these other kind of things. They had an opportunity to fix it, and they didn't. And so we've talked a lot about the offense. We talked a little bit about Mazi Smith. John, I'm sure you spent more time on the defense than I did. Talk to me about this defense that generated 4 takeaways. Who stood out for you in a positive way on the defensive side of the ball?
I think overall I was very interesting, especially given, it's preseason. They're going to run vanilla stuff. They're not going to get into all the exotic looks that Zimmer is made famous for. But it was still interesting to note how different just the presentation of the defense was compared to a Dan Quinn defense. You saw a ton of split safety shells. You saw them, majoring in over fronts, whereas Dan Quinn was someone who played a ton of under fronts. And I think that those changes are going to allow the defensive personnel that we have to play even better. And it's going to still create those turnover opportunities like that we saw. I think with Dan Quinn, most of his turnovers were created mostly through generating pressure because you have one or two best pressure generating players in the entire NFL, and Micah Parsons, and you have DeMarcus Lawrence, and then you have all the stuff that Dan Quinn loves to do with stunts and stuff up front, and that would get quarterbacks quick, and that would allow subpar passes that would create interception opportunities and all that. But with Zimmer, playing these over fronts, he's giving the linebackers a lot more protection up front. Linebackers a lot more protection up front, and it's allowing them to flow to the ball and make plays. One guy who I was probably the defender I was most impressed with was DeMarvion Overshown, just seeing his ability to not only fly to the ball, but play with patience initially. He would get, a little bit reckless at times. He would, overshoot his run fits, or he would attack the first stimuli that the offense would give him. But when we saw against the Rams, he was playing a little bit more patient. He was reading his triangle reads through the guard up to the backfield, and it was allowing him to stay patient, stay square. And then when he arrived, he would arrive with balance and be able to make tackles and be able to make plays. And I was just very, very impressed by the improvement that he's made. He's another guy. He's been injured for the last year. It's not like he's been able to train and get better and really improve the things that we do on the football field. But somehow he looks like he never missed time. He looks like he just carried on.
That's amazing. But it's amazing because that's a career killer. Getting hurt your rookie year is an absolute career killer.
Especially
I don't care if you're drafted in the. Yeah, I was going to say, I was literally about to say, I don't care if you're drafted top 10. Getting hurt in the first year is a career killer.
And
and he looks like a real life linebacker too. As a guy who converted from safety in college, like he doesn't look like,
He's definitely not averse to contact. He was willing to take on blockers. He's willing to, attack gaps. He's willing to do all the things that you are afraid of a lighter linebacker in today's NFL. And he did it all. I was just incredibly impressed to the point where I'm wondering, obviously Eric Kendricks is going to be one of the starters. He's a really, really smart Mike Green Dot guy. But are you going to see, like, Damone Clark has obviously been outstanding throughout training camp. And then you have DeMarvion Overshown, who's also been good without training camp. But then he, in my opinion, significantly outplayed Damone Clark in the first preseason game. So it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to deploy these linebackers, especially when they're in their nickel. Who are they going to trust? Is it going to be Clark or is it going to be Overshown? Because I honestly can see arguments for either one.
That stuff tends to work itself out. You get injuries, and then like back to him not playing. He's not in game shape. I mean, that dude's going to be on oxygen, by the halftime of the game one. It's how it is. It's just, there's a whole, it's a whole different, literally a whole different ball game when you're out there and live ammunition's flying. Yeah. So that it will tend to work itself out in the wash. The same way with the tight ends, and probably the same way with the wide receivers. One of these guys is going to go down. Somebody's going to secure it, and then away we go.
Yep, absolutely. And there's always the thing about defense is you're almost always better off when you have more guys who can come in and play because it allows you to play fast. If you've got guys who are capable and you can rotate those guys in, especially
versus having someone like Bell out there playing 90% of the snaps like he was at the end of the year and just getting mowed over.
And look at how Bell looked when he was at safety,
Back where he's supposed to be.
Yes. And then when the thing that I think the time that he spent at linebacker helped him when he's coming up to defend the run, he's just so much better at sifting through the different bodies than you see normal safeties in that situation be able to do. There were multiple times against the Rams where he was able to sift through the trash and make plays in the run support that, the other Cowboys safeties, when they'd come down, they wouldn't be able to make it as quickly or they'd get caught up in the trash. And that's when you saw the Rams be able to create some positive gains. Bell's ability to come down and run support is so valuable. And then we saw his ability in coverage as well. Last year, I think one thing that he didn't get enough credit for at linebacker was how good he was in coverage. He was, honestly much better than Leighton Vander Esch was in coverage. So in those situations, he was kind of an upgrade over LVE in those passing situations, just because of his obviously playing in the safety. He had good eyes. He was able to read, he was able to diagnose between the different route combinations. He was able to pass off receivers, take on into zone. He really had, the rules of the structure of the coverage of the defense really well, and that really paid off. And then you saw that continue when he was playing in a traditional safety role, either when he was in the box or when he was split as a half safety or a quarter safety against the Rams. I was very, very excited by what we saw from Marquise Bell for sure.
Absolutely. Mike, any other positive impacts from you on the defensive side of the ball that you saw on Sunday afternoon?
I saw Mike Zimmer defense, even though, like we're saying, it was he wouldn't play the hits. It was more of a Mike tune-up session. And the way that, Mazi's biggest deal last year was he was getting turned. And I've talked about it several different times online. Dan Quinn's, we're talking about his interceptions came off of pressure because he was all twist and stunts and Zimmer's on the back end, on the back seven, if you will. And when you got Mazi, who's already struggling getting turned, and you want him to twist and stunt and chip inside and two gap and all this stuff, it's not beneficial to it wasn't beneficial to the linebackers. You had guards climbing to the second level with a full head of steam, and then Bell sitting there at 214 pounds with a pocket full of rocks and just getting shoved into the cheap seats. And so that's going to be it'll be a more sound defense. Like it frustrated me to no end when people say, "Well, this defense is really good." When Dan Quinn was here, that's good, yes. Consistent? No. They were opportunistic, but they were not consistently down in and down at good. When you needed to go get one stop to close out the game, you're on the edge of your seat. You're just like, oh shit, who's going to blow their assignment? Who's going to let the wide receiver back behind them? Who's it going to be this time? And if it wasn't an interception to close out the game, the other team usually went down and at least got a field goal to put you in the OT. And I think having a much more sound defense, even if the interceptions come down, we'll be able to get off the field more consistently than in prior years.
Yeah, I totally agree. And me and Joey have talked consistently about how those issues were exacerbated against, the McVay tree, the Shanahan tree, that West Coast offense tree with a lot of play action, with a lot of motion at the snap. That's another thing we saw against the Rams is the Cowboys have a definitive order of operations when teams are playing motion. You're not seeing teams be able to quote unquote outmath them, like me and Joey did a big deep dive on that last week about how defense, a lot of it is about math. You want to get 3 over 2, 4 over 3. You want to be able to have the math advantage, especially in coverage, so that you have the opportunity to pass off, these split releases, these combination routes, these crossing routes, these type of things. And when you have the math on your side, it makes everything so much easier. And I think that is a lot about what Zim's defenses are predicated on. We're going to keep the math in our favor, and if they still out execute us, then hats off to them. And I think that is a winning formula, especially against the McVays and the Shanahan. They're going to get theirs, but you're giving yourself a fighting chance against those top flight, on the cutting edge of offensive teams.
I know that Dak loves him some Zim because now he gets to practice against an NFL defense.
Yeah.
I'm just
you hear
straight
the
up and down.
Players talk about it consistently. What are the things that you
They're
notice?
raving about it. Yeah.
They talk about the disguise. We don't know what's coming from snap to snap, whereas Dan Quinn is much more alignment, assignment, play fast. They're going to know what we're going to do, but because we've repped it so many times, we're going to play quote unquote faster than them. We're going to let our speed take advantage. But when you have,
and it works when you've got 5, Hall of Famers on that side of the ball. When he was in Seattle, literally the Legion of Doom, boom, whatever the hell. And then, you lose a guy here, you lose a Trayvon Diggs. Okay, crap. Well, now we don't have a defensive tackle. Okay, crap. Well, why are you still trying to run all these stuffs and twists when these guys can't manage to play consistently on a down in and down out basis, and you're just putting this almost like the Trey Lance thing. You're putting more and more on their plate, and they can't just go out there and play football. They can't, and it's all this stuff that he tried to throw in there, and you saw it. He just gets it once, like you're talking about on the play action and Mr. Ricks and stuff. They just got completely exposed.
We saw it last year. When the thing about a Zimmer defense is that he historically eats up rookie and young signal callers,
Yes.
eats them up for dinner because he's giving them so much disguise, so many combination coverages that their minds are just, they don't know what they're seeing. They can't trust their eyes. And that creates so many, problems, more and more problems down the road. And we saw that, against Josh Dobbs last year. If it was a Mike Zimmer defense against Josh Dobbs, there's no way the Cowboys lose that game.
Mike Zimmer, Jim Schwartz, Bill Belichick. I think that's about the three I can come up of off the top of my head that when you're going up against a quarterback that they haven't seen before, that quarterback's going to have a bad day in the office because that quarterback hasn't seen them before. And they have a plan. And that gives me hope for Tyler Guyton and Dak and this crop of wide receivers for week one because Jim Schwartz is coming with Myles Garrett. And Jim Schwartz has been giving us fits for years. And he used to whip Jason Garrett's ass up and down the damn field every time they play. And he's a hell of a defensive coordinator. So having that guy on your squad now and Mike Zimmer, where you practice against these hidden linebackers, these split safeties, the dime blitzes that come from the B gap instead of from off the corner, just this exotic stuff that Zimmer does. It's just going to make everybody better. And it's what I've been begging for years and years. I never wanted the guy to leave in the first place. So I'm absolutely ecstatic to be in town.
Yeah, it's pretty cool and pretty crazy to think about the fact that not all that much has changed about the way Mike Zimmer likes to play defense in 20-something years, and it still works. Like the only reason the only reason that he's not the head coach in Minnesota still is not because the defense wasn't acceptable. It's because he's a cranky old man and nobody liked to be around him anymore, and the offense wasn't.
God, he hated Kirk Cousins so much.
So you wind up with this defensive mind that gives you the opportunity to, like you guys have said, and I'm not going to beat this horse anymore, but it gives you the opportunity to know you've got a fighting chance scheme-wise going into any game you go into. There was a big story that came out after the preseason game against the Rams about how Zimmer called the defense in the booth without a play sheet, and I'm like, everybody's like, why would he? All this kind of stuff.
Baby.
This dude has been coaching this defense for like 30 years, and it's not a games plan specific thing. There's not like, hey, we got to make sure we handle this matchup right in this situation. You just go out and call your defense. Like, he probably could have done it in his sleep. Yeah, exactly. It's like,
we're going down.
We're watching the game. Just when we're looking at the crowd, being like, yeah, let's go. Let's go cover 6. Let's do that.
He probably could have I don't know. It probably could have just been looking at like the ESPN play updates that roll through. Like, okay, this was the result of the last play. This is the next down and distance.
The little bleacher report dots.
Yes. This is your front and coverage for the.
It's football. It's not difficult. I mean, it's difficult to play, but it's not difficult. Like, that hasn't changed much. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Kyle Shanahan's running his dad's offense. There's some tweaks in there, but that offense has been kicking people's ass in the run game for just as long as Zimmer's been in the league, 30 years. I mean, it's the same exact stuff. They just do it, little tweaks here and there, little tweaks per opponent, and then it just works.
Shanahan says it all the time. He says, I have one of the most simplistic offenses in the NFL. I just present it differently from snap to snap to snap, and that creates the air of confusion for the defense because they think like, oh, they're not going to run the same play from an I formation as they're going to run from like a 3-by-2, and he's like, I will not.
Watch it. Sean McVay uses that the air of complexity or the impression of. He's got a phrase that he uses over and over when you hear him talk to the media about how he thinks about offense. That you want to create the impression of complexity to the defense while creating as much simplicity as possible for your offense. And that's the name of the game. And the thing about Zimmer is essentially doing the same thing on the opposite side of the ball. That he's creating this air of complexity when really and truly a lot of what he's doing is still rushing 4 and dropping 7. He's just doing it from fronts that give you the opportunity to rush 4 out of 6 instead of these are the 4 guys that are coming or these are the 5 guys that are coming on every play. he'll put 6 or 7 at the line of scrimmage, put a guy in every gap, and you don't know which one's coming, and you've got to account for all of them because you never know. And then he'll drop 7 of them out, and now we're playing, a base cover 6 or something like that, or a quarters coverage, and with a 4-man rush in front of it. But it looks crazy complex to the quarterback because he didn't get the answers to the test before the snap.
Yeah. And I know we're getting close to the end of the show, and there's one thing I wanted to mention in regards to Mazi Smith.
Bring it.
Okay, guys, this is tough stuff. This is probably defense 301 here. But Mazi is number 58. That's a 5 and an 8. There's another guy, different person, totally different player.
When he takes off his helmet, he looks different. It's crazy.
Yeah, like they're not the same person. And his number is 68. And that's a different number. They're not the same guy.
That 5 and 6 looks way too similar.
Blown out of his gap. That's not Mazi Smith getting blown out of his gap. I know this is tough, but I want you to. I hope you guys are keeping up with me here.
68 sleeves. Mazi, no sleeves.
Different
Simple.
people.
Magic.
Different person.
Because, honestly, I thought Mazi performed pretty well. We talk about the cardio things, and I had a big diatribe on Twitter yesterday about how the fact that you expect a 300-pound human being who couldn't participate in the offseason, couldn't condition because of their shoulder injury, you expect them to come in and be, able to play with full fire, snap to snap to snap. That is just not something that's going to happen after 2 weeks of practice. And anybody that's been out of practice, they're working hard, but it's not like he's running sprints. It's not like he's, doing all this cardio-based work. They're mostly doing technique stuff with him, trying to make sure that he's technically up, not cardio-wise up. And that's something that's going to come as he continues to get time. It might not be until week 3, 4, 5 where he's finally in that kind of really good game shape that you can trust him for 30+ snaps a game. Because, it just annoys me how much people expect, oh, you're healthy, you're active, you have to be this. It's like
Michael Gallup.
Feasible. It's just not feasible with a human body. Mike was talking about it earlier with DeMarvion Overshown, who's a much smaller guy. It's just extremely difficult to get in game shape as it is, because you have to play games to do it.
I'll put it this way.
You haven't had an off season to be able to build that foundation of cardio so that when you get into these game situations, it'll affect your cardiovascular abilities much quicker. He has to create the foundation first before he can build on it. He's just probably getting to the end of the point where he's creating that foundation to where he can build it further. And I just think we got it. I know we all want to see him play well. He's a first-round pick and he hasn't performed up to expectation, but you have to be realistic with your expectations of him. And I just hope people will do that moving forward.
Take 3 months off the gym and do your same workout the first day back and see how that pans out for you. Now take 6 months off the gym.
And now work out, instead of working out against, weights, do it against another human being who has been working out that entire time.
He's fighting for his roster spot in the league. Like every single rep to him means the world.
And we talked about it. We talked about how hard it was going to be, how difficult the assignment that Mazi had this offseason was for him to stay on his own head. For him to, we all know he was down in weight last season. The reasons why, there's been a lot of speculation. Who knows? He was down in weight, and that's what matters, right? So he had to gain weight while at the same time dealing with shoulder rehab, which means he could not put on any upper body mass at all that was good mass. So, yes, he's up to, I think they said he weighed at 310 or so coming into camp.
He's not.
He's not. But he's up a little bit, right? He's up in weight. But any of that weight that he put on is probably not good weight. It is probably not lean mass. It's probably not easy weight to move. And so anybody who was surprised that Mazi Smith is having conditioning problems hasn't been paying attention over the last couple of months as we've been talking about the assignment that Mazi Smith had coming into the season and the way that
he's massively behind the 8 ball, and it's still real early in his career. These DTs, unless you're like Aaron Donald or Donkey Kong, you don't come in the league kicking ass. You don't. I don't care what round you were drafted in. You don't come in the league just kicking ass. It's not the way it works.
Yep.
I mean, look at Dexter Lawrence from the Giants. I think he is like him and Chris Jones are the top two like ass kickers on the defensive line or the defensive tackle position specifically. And him as a rookie, it wasn't great.
Yeah.
Second year wasn't even like fantastic. Now third year is when he really
that's when you get just like with tight ends. You need 3. Well, that's why I hate drafting tight ends. You draft a tight end, you develop him for 3 years, and then somebody outbids you on him, and you're lucky to get a comp pick back. Thank you for your service. So with the defensive tackle, I mean, you have to give the kid, like people say, oh, he's a bust. Like, you can't be a bust after 1 year. I mean, unless you're like Jamarcus Russell or something where you just go completely wheels off, but give the kid time. And then he's so far behind the 8 ball with the shoulder thing. Question for the class: defensive tackles, shoulder, kind of important. Kind of important for
a little bit.
So imagine how that shoulder felt when he laid down in bed that night. I bet he slept 14 hours. So
yeah, I think the moral of the story on this conversation for Mazi is that this year, 2024 specifically, you're looking for some flash from Mazi. You're looking for does he show the things that for year 3, 4, 5 would be the things that you want to see consistently. If he shows the ability to, which so far year 2 training camp, shown it in the inter squad practices, he's shown it in the game, he showed it, not consistently, but because you're not going to see the consistency. The conditioning isn't there. He's behind the 8 ball physically. We all understand that. If he can survive 2024 and be ready to have a real life offseason before the 2025 season, and in the meantime, show some flashes of some splash plays and things like that, which probably means they're going to have to go out and get a stabilizing force on the interior, a veteran interior defensive lineman. Yes. Linval Joseph, in the Jonathan Hankins mold, right? Like the veteran old guy who's just big and fat and can get in the way, right? Can be the stable force. And let Mazi show some flashes, monitor, get him on a snap count, a pitch count, however you want to call it, and then get him through this year. And then now you're really looking to 2025 to say, okay, Mazi Smith has to be one of the building block core components of this defense going into the third year.
My crazy ass will try to go get Dexter Lawrence. Let the Giants start 0-3, and I'll drive up there personally and go get him.
We'll put you in a light van and let you drive up there and pull up next to the Meadowlands, right? But yeah, so I think that's the moral of the story on Mazi is there's patience that needs to be had here. I very vocally was not a huge fan of the pick. But from what we've seen in year 2 so far, there are all the things that point to, hey, it's going to be better in year 2, but he's not going to be all the way there yet. And there's some bright futures ahead are all there. Now let's see if that continues. If we see that, continued drumbeat going forward.
I mean,
he's kind of riptide.
Like a comparison to the Mazi situation. Look at Jordan Davis with the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
He was someone he's bigger. He hasn't been injured, and he's arguably the most athletic nose tackle that's ever come out of the draft. But what did we see preseason week 1? That dude was getting bounced out of his gap on at least a couple of occasions. And he's someone who, he has shown those little flashes of being able to become that big nose tackle. But he's now coming into year 3, and he's still having some struggles. So give this guy some time. Give Mazi some time. Let him be healthy. Let him develop a little bit.
Cowboys fans in general don't know what they're looking at, period. Like a statement, but especially when it comes to a one tech, because we haven't had one in 30 years.
The 290-pound nose tackles. One we had.
Yeah, and then he had 1 year that went crazy trying to beat up Wade Phillips, and then Mark Colombo tuned him up in the hallway.
Yep.
Was it Wade Phillips or Jason Garrett he went after? He went after somebody, and he got his ass.
It was in my mind because I was like,
why are you picking on Wade? Leave that man alone.
On the earth. I was like, how are you going to go out Wade Phillips, who's like everybody's grandpa?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So we haven't had a defensive tackle in 30 years. So you're not, you're the guys, the best ones don't get. I mean, Aaron Donald, yes, he got sacks, but that is like the Patrick Mahomes tier of defensive tackle. We may never see that again, ever. Seriously.
Mhm.
So put that cute little idea over there in the fun box with Santa Claus and everybody else that doesn't exist, and then think about it rationally where you're at with this kid who's coming off of a shoulder surgery, who had a rough rookie year, and let him get some reps in, and then see where we're at year 3. What we want to see this year is not him not getting blown off the ball and turned sideways like he was all last year.
And I will say,
That would be a massive improvement.
And I will say, I do think Jeff Skanina is the exact type of defensive line coach that you want to be able to maximize Mazi Smith. He's getting in his ass and he's making
He's been on his ass like white on rice.
and he's not gonna let technical inefficiencies remain in his game. He's gonna clean those up immediately, or he's gonna just cuss his ass out every second that he's out there. But the great thing is you see Mazi respond well. When Jeff Skanina yells at him to do something, next play, he's doing that. He's not like rolling his eyes. And, people talk about Mazi's body language, about how he doesn't look like he's super excited all the time. And I just think that's kind of how he is. But when I was out there for camp, you see he does take coaching. He does want to get better. He doesn't, when Skanina yells at him, he's not, going to pout on the side. He's just like the kind of guy that he's not super amped. He's like the opposite of a DeMarvion Overshown, who has that frenetic, crazy energy constantly. Mazi's a little bit more low key, but he does take coaching. He does want to get better. He is making these improvements practice over practice. And I think Jeff Skanina is going to be the guy who not only from his playing time has the experience to be able to, kind of like paint the picture for Mazi about things that you can do, and he understands how difficult the tasks that he's asking him to do are. And I think he also matches that with the fieriness to be able to get that, what's the word I'm thinking of, he's trying to get, he's trying to motivate, he's getting that motivation in him as well. So I think Skanina is kind of, when the Cowboys hired a defensive line coach, Jeff Skanina, I hadn't really heard about him a ton, and I'm deep in the defensive line community, so the fact that when I don't hear of somebody a lot, I'm like, I kind of step back and like, I wonder here. But everything that I've seen, everything I heard him do from a coaching perspective, I really, really, really like so far. And those calves. Whew.
Yeah, that's a weird cat. Dog showing defensive.
Yeah.
But Mozzie's deal last year, he beat himself into a depression because he's really hard on himself. And his mentals were in the gutter. That's where a lot of the weight stuff came with, because anybody that's dealt with depression knows you're either going to eat or you're not going to eat at all. So there's that. And people quit on him because he quit on himself. You kept leading the water, and he just goes and sits down, and at a certain point, the team's got games to win. It's like, come on, dude, like get it together. We do not have time for this, right? And people quit on him. And as long as he's got somebody in his corner and he can keep out of here, because that's an issue, I think we'll be okay. He does seem like one hell of a coach.
From things I hear, him and Leon Lett weren't the best, coaching player pupil tandem.
That whole ex-player coach thing has always been weird to me.
Yeah,
that they do
Mazi, they seem to be compatible now. Obviously, it's with any coaching thing, you want to see how it's going to develop as it goes. But for right now, they're compatible. They're going over. I've seen times where there are, Justin Rogers, Denzel Daxon are going, doing drills, and Skanina's not even looking at them because he's giving Mazi Smith tutoring one-on-one. He's trying to, tell him about these specific technical points that he needs to improve. And you can see that the Cowboys, they really know that they need to get Mazi Smith technique up to a certain point. And
it's a $10 million investment. You've got to pour every ounce you can into making sure it succeeds.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we're a little bit over our hour. We could do this all day, man. The three of us could sit here and talk football all day. But we've also got big boy jobs and real life stuff we've got to go take care of. So, Mike, John, I appreciate you guys being here so much. This is a blast just to hang around and talk football with you guys. Thanks, you guys who joined us live, you guys who are watching us after the fact. We appreciate it so much. If you like this video, if you like this content, if you like this way of talking about football and thinking about football, hit the subscribe button right down there below the video. Hit the like button. Share it with your friends, all that kind of stuff. You guys know the YouTube stuff well enough to know what you're supposed to do. Do it now. We're getting ready to get into the season. It's going to be some really cool content once we get into the season. We're going to figure out all this technical stuff. Mike says he's a caveman. I'm a little bit of a technology caveman myself. So we'll figure out all the technology stuff with the film, and we will be ready to go once the season gets started. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. We will see you on Thursday as we get ready for the Cowboys' second preseason game of the year. As we get closer and closer.
Peace.